Thank you for bearing with us for a couple minutes. First of all, I just want to say again, a wonderful opportunity to have this more intimate discussion on a very, very important topic, and one that even those of us who spend a lot of time discussing global education oftentimes don't seem to have enough time discussing this particular topic in detail. So again, we are going to be screening and launching an exciting new film called Voices of Teachers from Conflict Zones. Right now, there are 75 million children in countries facing war. And when conflict or natural disaster erupts, education is usually the first thing to be suspended and the last to resume. Governments are often overwhelmed by the immediate needs, the most desperate needs of individuals, and oftentimes the traditional focus on those specific needs will interrupt education. And what is interesting is that if you look at the entire envelope of humanitarian spending, ready for this statistic? This is a good one to tweet. Only 2% is spent on education and emergencies. So, that being said, oftentimes teachers are some of the most influential voices for equality, for access, and for quality education, and are key to the sustainable achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Yet, in crisis and post-conflict settings, their roles are often overlooked, with other urgent issues taking greater priority. Qualified teachers are also in very short supply, and female teachers in particular become very difficult to identify, and this has a knock-on effect for girls' enrollment. Many are new recruits with minimal experience or training to prepare them for the complex challenges of teaching in fragile settings. And with few resources at their disposition and facing overcrowded classrooms with students having suffered trauma, displacement, hunger, and fear, their burden is a very heavy one. So as teachers play such a critical role in shaping the future of their students and communities, their role should not be an afterthought, but an integral part of preparedness and planning phases for education in emergencies and in chronic crises. And this is exactly why we are here today. Together with colleagues and members from the Post-Conflict and Peace Education Alliance, we are launching Voices of Teachers from Conflict Zones today. This film aims to amplify the voices of these brave teachers, unpack their daily realities, and to listen to what they say needs to change directly from teachers themselves. Plan International Canada is absolutely delighted to have helped in the development and creation of this video, and you will be able to access the link, and we ask you to share it broadly and wildly. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Nadine Grant.
Thanks very much, Caroline. I'm the Vice President of Programs at Plan Canada. I'm really happy to be here. I'm also the co-chair of this loose alliance of the Varkey Foundation. Every year at the GESF, the Varkey Foundation establishes a number of loose alliances. Basically, a bunch of people are thrown together with very little, if any, budget, and asked to address one of the major challenges. Our challenge was peace education and post-conflict education. So we thought, how better to speak to this issue, but from the voice of teachers in these most remote parts of the world, in some of the forgotten corners, forgotten conflicts. And because a video sometimes speaks louder than words, we decided to just put together a short clip. So the Alliance members come from Afghanistan, India, Colombia, Norway, Canada. We are NGO workers, academics, and advocates, teacher advocates. So we went to 7 countries to prepare this video using handheld mobile devices, just cameras on your phone. We had no training, by the way, as videographers, and we just left open-ended questions to hear the authentic voice of teachers. What did they say about their lived experience in conflict zones? These are often overlooked teachers. So just amplifying that voice, as Caroline mentioned, through this modest video. So that's what we did. A year later, we're really happy to be launching that. And to kind of give us a bit more context on the issue, we have this excellent panel here today. I'd like to start with Mohamed first, who you all heard at the plenary. If, Mohamed, you could tell us a few words about your experience and the importance of teachers when you were going through your education in Sierra Leone and beyond.
To me, when I started school at age 10, not knowing how to read or write, I was sort of put in a setting where the only outcome was failure. And I get that most of these programs are good intentioned, in this particular case, UNICEF, but when you put people in schools without the right support, it's very likely that they're going to fail. To me, my teaching came from the people who I've met along the way. During the war in Sierra Leone, there was no school. And it's sad, like, the reality is there's always going to be conflict. Call me pessimistic, but there's always going to be conflict. But what we need to do is we need to understand that there are rules. And within these rules are that we have to protect schools. It's a no-go zone. You leave teachers alone, because at the end of the day, when these conflict happens, knowledge is, the countries are set back decades in the amount of capital that they lose from people not being able to go to school, from teachers not being able to teach. And when teachers do not have the protection that they required, the system becomes chaotic. And then you have a civil war in my country, and people were like, oh my God, poverty created the civil war. And I'm like, no, poverty didn't create the civil war. It's because we did not fund enough education. And I mentioned this earlier, that no nation in the world has ever developed economically, socially, or culturally without an educated population. It's a matter of fact. And so, in a more interconnected world, we are left with two choices. We can either protect teachers and make sure that in times of conflict, teachers are allowed to teach, or that we can say, like, well, it's happening over there. It's not going to happen to us, because at the end of the day, it is going to happen to us. That's just how connected we are. And in Senegal, other youth and I came up with a statement, a solidarity statement, where we told world leaders at the Global Partnership for Education Summit that as youth, we're not asking you to give us voices. We already have voices. What we're asking you to do is to give us the medium which we can express the voice that we have and which we can help build on our future. Because, well, there are more of us than there are of the older generation, and it's a chaotic world if we do not bridge the gap, if we do not bridge the economic gap, the digital divide between the haves and the have-not, between the Western countries and within the poorer countries. But yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think your statements this morning were really moving and really got, I think, the audience riveted. And thank you once again for those opening remarks. I'd like to now turn to Yasmine Sherif. She's the director of Education Cannot Wait, which is the first real global movement to fund dedicated funding for education in emergencies, a very important organization going forward. So Yasmine, if you have some words to add to this discussion, that would be most appreciated.
Thank you very much, Nadine, and thank you, Caroline. And it's so wonderful to be here. This is such an exciting conference. So I've been asked to say a few words about why we need to listen to the people on the ground. And I think it's a privilege to sit next to Mohamed. And you didn't go into the details of what you have gone through, but I'm thinking about the many wars that I have worked in over the past 30 years, emergencies, crisis countries, and remembering, following closely what happened also in Sierra Leone back in the 90s. When we speak about armed conflict and emergencies, it is not the regular development situation. These are abnormal environments. There are unspeakable violations and atrocities that are being committed on teachers, students, communities, and an entire nation. I'm just thinking about the example of Sierra Leone. I remember breaking down crying, and I was just a witness to it, of a young mother who had both her arms chopped off by armed militia, and if she was running, trying to hold her child with those arms bleeding in all directions. And that was so common, the amputations during the war in Sierra Leone. About all the teachers and students that were running underground schools during the Taliban in Afghanistan, knowing that if anyone would discover them, they would all be executed. Or thinking about the little school children in Hebron, in West Bank, in Palestine, who watch executions from the windows of their school, or teachers who don't dare to go through the checkpoints because there are no women soldiers to go through and do the check on them, and therefore opt to stay at home, and schools are disrupted. About the bombing of schools in Syria, there was, not only long ago, there was a whole classrooms full of children, and bombs hit the school, and they all perished. These are abnormalities that we can hardly imagine unless we had been in their shoes. And that's why it's so important to listen to them and try to empathize and understand what it means to be in a country of conflict and violence. And then reduce ourselves, I think, and this is very much the principle of education cannot wait, to humble servants. What do you need? What can we do to empower you? And when it comes to teachers, when you are a child or a young or a youth in an emergency, one thing that you need, and I think Mohamed alluded to that, you need somebody that brings you that light of hope, somebody that can help heal your wounds, that can help you away from those suicidal thoughts of having your whole family executed, or can mentor you into a better life and educate you. It's more than just the math and the science. It's to become that role model. And that's the responsibility that teachers shoulders upon themselves. Besides the fact that they themselves are the targets of a conflict, and their schools, their workplace is a target in the conflict, they also have to carry the added burden of healing and helping and giving hope to the students. So I think we should all bow to the work and the profession and the supra strength that teachers are expected to provide to the young and the young children and the youth in the middle of an emergency. And I would like perhaps to end by saying a quote on this, just to show the way we in education cannot wait. Want to honor all the teachers, and I would encourage everyone to see the video that is being presented today of the voices of the teachers in crisis. Someone once said, the universal mission of all educators is to lit the torch of light and to illuminate the world. And that is the role of teachers. And because we are here in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, I'll also try to say it in Arabic. Shama Modeya. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yasmine. Those were very inspirational words, and makes me want to be a teacher in a conflict zone. The next speaker is Samar. Samar Nazzal is a teacher from Jordan and has been teaching robotics and physics to Syrian Palestinian refugee girls, in UNRWA schools in Irbid camp in Jordan. Samar has also been recognized many times for her pioneering work in girls' education, and in 2015, she won the UNRWA Distinguished Teacher Award. She is also a Global Teacher Prize finalist, and we'd be delighted to hear your thoughts on this topic. Thank you, Samar.
First of all, thanks for giving me this opportunity to talk about voices. They gave me one. Yes, okay. But my voice is 25 years teaching, but my voice is still soft. Sorry. Okay.
Just use the mic just in case.
Okay. Now I've been teaching in UNRWA. UNRWA, for whom who doesn't know it, it's for a UN for relief and working agencies for the Palestinian and for the Palestinian. It established since 1949. So it is an pioneer. Sorry, is this good? Okay, so it is a pioneer leading agency for leading or teaching the refugees. And I want to say that the experiment in teaching the refugees in this 25 years, it's okay. Language. It's make my sorry. Okay. We teach since 25 years. I teach students, refugees, girls in Jordan. They came from Palestine. And the last 6 years, we have Syrian refugee girls, and that's make our classes more crowded. I teach classes 45 girls. I teach 23 hours per week. Although we have a problem that the girls are in the 14 years old, they are getting early marriage. Their parents did not want them to come to school, afraid for them. So we have to encourage girls to finish their schools so they can become a teachers or they work. Something else I want to call about it is I am a refugee, and working with UNRWA is make me safe, me and my families. So I encourage the agencies who is working with refugees to hire a refugee girls, refugee teachers. If you hire a teacher, a female teacher, you're going to save her from abusing, save her children. So I encourage that, and it must be the priority is to refugees to be working with refugees. That's what I call. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Samar. So I think you can appreciate this has been quite an interesting perspective of our speakers here. Now we'd like to actually screen the movie, the video. So if I could ask our technology partners to screen the video for us. And once again, a big thank you to Varkey Foundation for supporting the editing of this video, as well as to the members of the Alliance, which are a number of NGOs and academics from across a wide spectrum of countries.
And as you watch the video, if you have comments, have thoughts, please use the hashtag #TeachersInConflict. Hashtag #TeachersInConflict.
يعني خوفي منه ما حدا أكثر شيء
قذيفة.
Hello, my name is Hanan Al-Hroub. I am from Palestine and I am the winner of Global Teacher Prize 2016. I won the award for my methodology Play and Learn, focusing on providing a safe space in the classroom and embracing the slogan No to Violence through my teaching. My experience made me aware that the voices of teachers who are working so hard to provide children a safe education are often not heard. In this film, teachers from around the world discuss the realities of teaching in conflict and post-conflict settings. They share the daily struggles that they face when trying to provide a safe, quality education for children. These are the people who know best how to address these challenges.
When the children, they use these knives, they use guns, because some of them were caught and to the war. What they used to do, they bring back to class. Now they don't have the guns, they don't have these knives, so they use their pens to other children.
We are only 8 caregivers and handling around close to 2,000 or 3,000 there children in the school.
dans une zone conflit ou menacée, les élèves apprennent toujours, et les élèves sentent toujours la peur.
डेफिनेटली अगर हम देखें तो इसकी यानी शॉर्ट टर्म एज वेल एज लॉन्ग टर्म इफेक्ट्स है। शॉर्ट टर्म ये है कि इनका करिकुलम जो होता है, जो मान लीजिए इनका सिलेबस होता है, कंप्लीट नहीं होता है।
Children, when they first dropped here to the camp, they felt mispleased. These children do not come from same communities; they come from different communities.
اینمی وقتی که در یک قریه درگیری باشه و جنگ باشه و اینمی زدن باشه، مثلا صدای فیل باشه و صدای تیاره باشه، حتما اینمو بالای شاگرد، بالای مکتب، بالای امو محل، منطقه، بالای معلمین تاثیر داره.
Entonces era uno tratando de mostrarles a los muchachos, de hacer que les gustara un poco más el estudio para que se quedaran en la escuela y no se dejaran convencer tan fácil.
We need to have guidance and counseling for these children to handle these children in all these aspects. We really need so many teachers to come in.
इसमें जैसे प्रत्येक शाला के लिए मूलभूत सुविधाएं शासन के द्वारा दी जानी है। खासकर मुझे पेयजल की जो व्यवस्था है हमारे यहाँ
مثلا به خاطر ماش بگو یک ماش ناچیز است، نخواهیم که بیگان ها بیاید دست ما شما را بگیره. باید ما خودمان دست خودمان را بگیریم و
Invertir en educación, yo creo que dice, la educación no es un gasto, es una inversión. Entonces yo creo que si se invierte en educación se estaría trabajando mucho por la paz.
Conflict deeply affects the teaching and learning process. The best source for removing the terrorism is education.
It is imperative that we start investing in education also from the perspective of the teachers.
Teachers and their alliances have come together to develop a call to action on the international community and governments. They want them to recruit and fund more teachers, especially females in conflict and post-conflict zones, and ensure they are paid fairly, recognise teachers' qualifications across borders, and train and support teachers in conflict and post-conflict zones, ensure schools are safe and protected from attacks, collect and report reliable data on attacks on educational facilities to end impunity, develop and share relevant gender-sensitive teaching materials, and listen to the voices of teachers and local communities in conflict zones, and take action to provide every last child with a safe, quality education. More information can be found at this web address.
Does anybody have any questions about the video or to any of the speakers? Yeah, just present yourself. At GSF?
The hashtag is Teachers in Conflict. Hashtag Teachers in Conflict.
We'll also be having a more in-depth conversation on education and emergencies in the context of the G7, which will be held in Canada this year. So we'll be having a session that starts, I believe, at 1:30 in the Spice Room, if anyone is interested. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Mike from Ustad Mobile. I had the privilege of living in Afghanistan for 8 years. And my question to the members of the panel is, we know that 500,000 Afghan children are out of school today, not because there's not the money, it's because of ghost schools, it's because of management issues, it's because of corruption, that these 500,000 children whose placements are fully funded are not in school. And without engaging in any sort of the hideous teacher bashing that we sometimes see, we wonder from the perspective of teachers and the perspective of the donors, how do we overcome these horrendous barriers in conflict zones to make sure that the resources that are there get the kids and teachers what they need to have?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I'm happy that it is asked. But I think it's a very important one, and it's often being raised. I was in Afghanistan. It was actually my first time going to a conflict zone in 1990, and then I was back in Afghanistan with Education Cannot Wait only a month ago, precisely to overcome the barriers in crisis. And that's the special design of Education Cannot Wait, is for emergencies. In Afghanistan, the situation is the following. You have a humanitarian side, it's on this side, and they deliver fast services to the education sector 6 months at a time. Okay, we all understand that if you do that from the humanitarian perspective, 6 months at a time, you will never have continuity, you will not have quality, and it will be pretty much a piecemeal operation. And that's what happens in emergencies. On the other hand, there is a big trust fund in Afghanistan that is meant to work with the government to improve procurement processes, address corruption, which is, as you said, widespread, and move a system that is more or less dysfunctional after over 30 years of conflict. And that takes 2, 3, maybe 10 years to address, 20, if not more. So what do you do? And that refers to your question, when you have 6 months in some kind of cycle, and then you have something that will take up to 10 years or 20 years to address. What do you do between that? And all the children and the young and the adolescents that are out there who don't receive quality education, it's a big gap to fill. And that's what Education Cannot Wait do. We work through something called direct execution, meaning we do not channel resources through dysfunctional governments that have not yet put in place the right and efficient structures, not because it's their own fault, but because the crisis, the war, the conflict does not give them the opportunity to rebuild the functional systems and accountable systems. So we use direct execution, meaning that our implementing partners who have undergone assessment are implementing accountably on the ground. We bring the humanitarians from this side and the development actors from this side to ensure that we have development and humanitarian working side by side to deliver education now, not next year, not in 2 months at a time, but at least with a cycle of 3 years that is renewable until the government have built its capacity to deliver education on the ground. And this is what we say, humanitarian speed. We moved fast because education cannot wait for all those girls and boys out in the communities in Afghanistan. Humanitarian speed, but with the development depth so that we can achieve Sustainable Development Goal 4 and have quality education. It's a different modus operandi and a different design, and that is what brings the added value and makes it so unique in our programs. So this is what we do as a mechanism on the ground, especially for Afghanistan. We've just been out there. And I would like to say that the government of Afghanistan, they really want this to happen, and they want education to happen now, and they want the girls to be educated, but their own mechanisms and systems that do not allow them to do so, and that's why they are very welcoming to the work that we are doing. Thank you.
Perhaps a very quick question, and then we're going to have to wrap it up.
Hello. I'm Nawaz. So basically, I work for. I'm a student. So my question is, why hasn't there been an attempt to try and deliver education through either some sort of vocational training or resource-based learning, so that even when a student finishes maybe 2-3 months of education, he has something delivered at the end of the day? Because curriculum-based education would take longer and would not be able to deliver in a conflict zone.
Can I answer? Okay. For the curriculum in Jordan, when we teach the refugees, we have a parallel one for the students in the houses. Because sometimes they cannot come to school. So there is a curriculum parallel to that one. They can study it in the homes. So if they go away from school, they can still be educated in the houses. That's what we are doing for the UNRWA children, for the Palestinian refugee.
Mohamed, do you want to add another word?
Yeah, I mean, very quickly, knowledge is infinite. Knowledge doesn't discriminate against race, gender, nationality, or what have you not. Access and opportunity, however, they're restricted. They're restricted not by what people know, but by the countries that they're from, their nationalities, and the families that they were born into. And so providing that vocational training that you're talking about is this idea of it's not instant. It's going to take time. But I think that the world is now realizing, for the longest time, it's always been education is like math, science, and law. It's not that way. I mean, Norway didn't do it that way, and I think the world is learning, and that we're starting to provide these mechanisms that would employ people today so that come the future, they may be able to send their kids to school.
I think we're out of time, but I just want to thank everyone who's been here. And again, appreciate the panel and sharing your experiences and thoughts and bringing it to life for us. So thank you. And again, I just encourage you to keep in mind that 2% of all spending in humanitarian situations goes to education. And we are losing entire generations with the youngest cohort of people ever on the face of this earth. We have to be able to change that. So again, thank you so much for attending, and let's continue to keep the teachers in mind as we look to progress the dial on education. Thank you.
Thank you.
The session is over. We would like to ask you to exit the room, and if you want to come back to next section,